Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Dan Kelly, President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Happy to be with you.
Well, Dan, throughout the country, obviously, COVID measures are different in different jurisdictions, et cetera. But one thing that has been very noticeable throughout this pandemic is the quote unquote unfair advantage of big box stores and how they are getting a break, I guess, for lack of a better word, compared to small business. Can you tell me just a little bit about, from the CFIB point of view, how you feel about what's happening in this regard?
Sure. Look, this has been a huge issue for small retailers. During the spring lockdowns, of course, most provinces shut down tight as a drum, independent businesses, local businesses, but they had to allow people to buy groceries and pharmacy products. So if you had grocery and pharmacy as part of your product offering in the spring, you were allowed to stay open while everyone else was required to close as part of the March, April lockdowns. Those measures continued for some time and really kicked the wind out of small firms. Most businesses, though, understood that government in the spring needed to react quickly. They needed to put in place blunt actions because we didn't know what the heck we were dealing with. At the same time, people needed to eat. As the restrictions started to ease over the summer, of course, then more and more retailers were allowed to open. But sadly, we're in some provinces right back to where we started. Uh, Ontario, for example, has recreated this complete unlevel playing field by closing down essentially across the entire province every single independent business to in-store traffic, while allowing Walmart and Costco to still continue to serve customers in store. Some provinces have gotten this balance right. They've either taken one of two approaches. Some provinces have shut down all retailers and limited them to a certain capacity. So, for example, in Alberta, all retailers are allowed to open to in-store traffic, but at a 15% capacity restriction. Other provinces have it at 25, some at 50. There are two provinces, Quebec and Manitoba, that have taken a different approach, and that is to say that the big box stores can remain open, but they're limited to essential goods only. So Costco and Walmart, they're allowed to stay open, but they're only allowed to sell grocery products, hardware products, and pharmacy products. Yeah. You can't go in and buy a TV or a T-shirt. Ontario is the only province at this moment that has this incredibly unfair playing field where small firms are shut down tight as a drum and large businesses, big box stores, allowed to stay largely business as usual.
Yeah. Now, obviously, small retailers and small businesses are having a tough time even before the pandemic, right? Competing against the Costco, the Walmarts of the world because of price, right? Obviously, is there a fear here that we're driving consumers and driving the spending dollar more and more to these big box stores that even when things get lifted, the habits are being formed of driving the herd to those entities?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, some of this is natural during the pandemic. More and more people, because of their concerns of not wanting to be in the public, have chosen to shop online. Amazon, other large retailers had an existing competitive advantage. We don't hold that against them. Small firms were less likely to be online, more reliant on in-store, face-to-face commerce. But it's one thing for that to be, basically a win because of the technology or the way that businesses have adopted things. Yeah. It's quite another to be handed a competitive advantage by government policy. And that's what's happening right now in Ontario and happened across Canada in the spring. Many retailers really, I think, were grateful that Premier Kenney in Alberta apologized to the business community of the province and said that the actions the province took in the spring, where they shut down small guys and drove traffic to the large by government policy or edict, that was unfair, that was wrong. I wish Doug Ford felt similarly. Yeah, Kenny hasn't repeated this, but Premier Ford has. And just this week, Ontario put in place even tighter rules. If you can believe this, Ontario has now limited the number of hours that a business can open.
Yeah.
The business is already shut to in-store traffic, but they've been able to sell things through curbside pickup or home delivery. Now, both curbside pickup and home delivery are limited to you can't do it any later than 8 o'clock, while the Walmart store remains open till 11.
Yeah.
So the small guy can't hand a book to a customer out their door. The small salon that's trying to sell some products can't drop off your shampoo at 8:15 on your doorstep with no one there. But Walmart can stay open and you can walk in really at any time that Walmart chooses. Amazon can deliver at any hour of the day that it chooses. It's the small business that is being punished. And that's the part that has electrified Ontario's business community and made them deeply, deeply angry at the Ford government.
Yeah, whether it's Ontario or other provinces that have created the environment where it's unfair out there. What I can't get out of my brain is like, don't these politicians realize this? Don't they realize the common sense here of what you're doing and the lives and jeopardy of businesses that they're putting at stake right now?
Look, I know that politicians need to focus on the healthcare emergency first to ensure that we protect as many Canadian lives as possible from the pandemic. That makes sense to us. But this has now been going on for 9, 10 months.
Yeah.
We should be learning better what to do and what not to do, learning from other jurisdictions. For goodness sakes, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, that wasn't afraid to use lockdown measures, said to the public that he can't possibly support continuing lockdowns in New York until such time as vaccines are widespread, because people won't have jobs to come back to. And that's the tricky balancing act that governments have not done the greatest job in many provinces across Canada, and we need them to do better. We need to ensure that Canadians have jobs to come back to, that independent businesses survive the pandemic. Many of the government support programs are in place now. Some of them are delivering money, but they're not going to be enough as these lockdowns continue and vaccines are going to take some time to take hold. Look, I mean, right from the start of the pandemic, small firms have had their teeth kicked in. And some of that is just the nature of this terrible, terrible disease that is spreading around the world. But some of it is by government policy, and that's the part that we're reacting to. I will say on the positive side, many Canadians are taking the time to really think about where they're spending their money and are trying to find ways to support small and medium-sized businesses. We at CFIB have a small business everyday campaign encouraging Canadians to patronize small firms. Their governments aren't making it easy, but there are ways. And if 150,000 retailers are now, small retailers are online that weren't online at the beginning of the pandemic, that's a huge uptick in e-commerce on the part of small business. And we really encourage consumers, if your favorite store, your favorite restaurant didn't have its own website at the start of the pandemic or even a couple of months ago, check them out. And if they're not online, give them a phone call. They may have creative ways to get your product, to get your good, to get your dinner to you that you may not be aware of. And that can make a world of difference for small firms trying to survive until such time as vaccines kick in and more of us can return to in-person, face-to-face commerce.
Yeah. One final thing, Dan, and I believe it's Hudson's Bay that has taken this to court, right? This idea of certain stores having more privilege, I guess, in these times.
Yes.
Is there more court challenges pending out there that you've heard of? What about you guys as an organization? Have you thought about taking some of these measures to court?
We've been asked 1,000 times by members and business owners and consumers that to have CFIB sue the government over this policy, the provincial governments for these rules. We actually looked into this, and the legal advice we were given was that there's no chance in hell of the courts opening up these rules in the middle of an emergency situation. And there was an earlier court case that essentially from an appliance store that has failed in Ontario. I have lost track right now of where the Bay case is at, but we're not seeing that as an avenue, unfortunately, to success at this stage.
Okay, well, great. Thanks as always, Dan, for joining us.
Anytime.
All right, that was Dan Kelly, president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.